I actually had a moment where like an epiphany where I was like, "Oh, I'm noticing the lighting like right now, like sitting in the theater like it was The Force Awakens, like the climax of the movie. I actually just watched like the lighting tell me how to feel,
Yes.
and I remember knowing exactly what he was going to do before it even happened because I knew from based on the lighting.
On today's episode, I am so beyond happy to have my very talented friend Ashley Taylor here on the show. She's worked on many movies and TV shows like Frozen 2, Raya and the Last Dragon, Moana 2, The Flash, and Encanto, just to name a few. We're so happy that she's here with us today, and we'd like to welcome to the show our friend, lighting artist, Ashley Taylor. Hello, my friend.
Hello.
Hi. Thank you for being on the show.
Yes, thank you for having me. I'm so excited to be here.
Yeah, I'm so excited that you are here. Let's do it. Let's talk about your career.
Okay.
What is it that you do for a living?
I'm a lighting artist. I'm a lighting artist at Disney Animation, and I would say that I'm responsible for the mood of the shot and to support the story and to help tell the story using light and color.
That's so cool.
There's actually two parts to my job. We do lighting, and then the second part is compositing.
Mm-hmm.
So in lighting, we're just putting in a bunch of lights and giving ourselves a lot of options. And we create something called passes, which creates a whole bunch of different layers in 2D after we hit render. And then we take it into Nuke and we do compositing and we bring it all back together again. And
Wow.
of course, there's a process of getting a bunch of notes and hitting, making sure everyone gets what they need out of the shot. And then we just do the final notes in compositing. Usually sometimes there's a back and forth between lighting and compositing.
Mm-hmm.
And then it ends up in compositing. And then we hand it off to the stereo artist after that.
Could you maybe walk through like what 3D lighting kind of is and what compositing is?
Lighting in 3D is actually really cool. We have the entire set, all the characters, all the animation, all the acting is all in this 3D software. And it's literally like as if you stepped into any room and you just have everything as an object, everything's built for you. And then we're responsible for actually showing everything off, like bringing in all the lights, same way that you did here for this set. You have a bunch of lights on us so that we can make sure that we're seeing what we're saying, what we're doing, how we're moving, acting. And we're doing the exact same thing in 3D. We're actually just placing we have a bunch of different styles of lights, quads, spheres, spotlights, a bunch of different things. And we actually just place them all around the characters, which we normally call stage lighting. We have a bunch of lighting in the background to light the actual backgrounds. A lot of the times the set itself will have practical lights. So we actually need to supplement those practical lights and actually what does a real light look like, a recessed light or, a sconce light on the wall.
Right.
We actually need to put in the light. Someone models the light itself, but we actually have to put in the light and make sure that it emits light the way that it would look in real life.
Wow. So you're looking at a lot of reference for stuff like that.
Tons
right?
of reference.
Yeah.
I take a lot of photos in real life to make sure that I can actually see what it looks like in real life. And then you have to try and emulate that with a 3D light.
Right.
And yeah, it's a really complex process, but it's super cool when you actually get the light in there, because then the world itself that everyone else has built before you starts to actually come to life. It starts to look believable and like grounded in real life.
Gives it color and saturation and beauty.
Totally.
Yeah.
Yep. And then what we like to do kind of after that process is make sure we have all of those lights separate in every way possible, so that we have the most control over exposure, color, all that stuff in compositing. Once you get into compositing, it's more of a 2D space and you actually can't move the light in 3D space anymore. So if you need to move it in 3D space, you're doing it in Houdini, you're doing it in 3D space. After that, you can mess with the exposure and all the other things and do some 2D tweaks, but it's more like you have flat rendered out passes after that. So yeah, it's like this interesting back and forth. You kind of have to set yourself up in 3D to know what you want to do with the lights in 2D.
Are you trying to match real world lighting all the time? Or is it kind of a combination of that plus a little bit of
magic?
Yeah, magic.
Yeah, it's a yes and no. I think I would say that I've spent a tiny bit of time working in live action, and I would say one of the main differences for me that I noticed is that we do really saturated lights, meaning like the color of the light is way oversaturated from what would be in the real world. That is to say, like there are places in the real world that still have saturated lights, but I think it's more likely that when you step out into the world, the sunlight, there's a Kelvin scale, of course, but I think we tend to bump up the saturation a little bit more
Mm-hmm.
to really show off the colorful worlds.
Right.
And
To
in
accentuate it.
exactly. And in part, that is also a lot of other departments doing some of that work too. Obviously, the textures of things that we have are like way more saturated than you probably would get in the real world. So it's kind of like we kind of hold hands on that together and kind of move
Yeah.
forward. And, it all comes from someone that actually just drew something and illustrated something with really saturated, colorful, strokes at first. And then you just take that and you have to try and match it,
Right.
which is super cool.
Yeah, and animation is kind of exaggeration
Totally.
as a default, you
Yeah.
know? Yeah.
So I guess that's our version of exaggerating.
Yeah.
If animation's doing like very crazy poses, we're getting crazy with the lights, probably.
Getting crazy with the
We're getting
lights.
crazy.
Ashley Taylor.
Yeah.
What was your initial inspiration for wanting to go become a lighter? Was that a thought? Did you even know that was a career when you were younger?
Not at all. Not at all. I didn't think about who made the animated movies. Like I loved animated movies in general, but I didn't think about who made the movies at all. Like not even a little bit, to be honest. I didn't think I wanted to be an artist growing up. I definitely had creative tendencies. I would draw and I would color, a lot of things like that, but I didn't think about animation being a career whatsoever. I actually think I started off more just being really interested in computers themselves and programming, believe it or not.
Wow.
When I applied to college, I thought I really wanted to be a programmer. I think in high school, I was dabbling a lot with HTML and coding websites and doing things like that. And I would create like a fancy layout for my website or whatever.
Yeah,
and, back in the day, even before like Photoshop was even invented, I think it was like Paint Shop Pro or something like that. And it was really cool to just make images and put them on a website. And I had some internet pals that would go back and forth and kind of give each other notes and stuff. And it was fun.
Oh, that's cool.
But I thought that I wanted to do computer programming. So that's kind of what I applied to school for, was computer science. And I got into that program and I was really excited. And I did my whole freshman year at UMass Amherst as a computer scientist. And now thinking back, it's so funny. And I laugh because I really did struggle. Like it was not what I thought it was going to be. I had some friends in the computer science realm that we would help each other out with projects and stuff, but I never had a passion for it ever. And then we did actually have a computer animation concentration that kind of went hand in hand with like the studio art program. So I remember like at the beginning of my sophomore year, I had a day where I was switching my major. I was holding all my files in my hand and I walked from the computer science building to the other side of the campus, which was a 20-minute walk.
Wow.
I'm just like smiling the whole time, like I'm going to do art. And I handed off my files to the studio art building and then I just got started with art. And I was starting from scratch. It was a very foundation-based program. You're just drawing, painting, all that stuff.
Yeah, I love that you made a physical transition. You physically
Yep.
walked across the campus and you're like, I am transforming into artistic Ash now.
I was just like smiling like ear to ear, like I'm doing it.
Yeah.
And it was one of the more pivotal moments in my life. Like I really made that decision and just stuck with it.
Wow.
And after that, I was so excited to be in art and just like I felt free. I was like just making art. But again, the concentration was animation. I kind of always knew that's where I was headed. It was still computer adjacent,
right?
But I wanted to make art.
And was that what you wanted to do with the computer science degree initially? Was animation, or was it more kind of broad and then
I think
you winnowed down to animation?
In high school, it was more like I was writing code to make like a calculator of sorts or something like that. But again, if I was making a calculator that would calculate like I did like an ice cream cone, like what's this ice cream cone going to cost? But I cared more about what the GUI looked like than like actually creating the science or the math behind it.
Yeah.
So I was like, okay, maybe I'm not exactly in the right spot.
Yeah. The GUI is like the
graphic user interface.
Yes,
Sorry,
right.
Yeah.
Graphic user interface, like the little website.
Exactly.
Visually.
Yeah. I cared about what the buttons looked like.
Right.
So, so I carried my files, started in studio art, took a bunch of classes. It was really cool. Like it really opened up everything for me in terms of like just art in general. Like what can I do? And then the concentration in animation meant I was taking a bunch of film classes, which that opened that door up. And I was like, whoa, there's a whole world out here. And I had film teachers that were extremely passionate about what they were doing. I'd sit in like a 3-hour class and it would go by so fast and just feel like okay, I'm in the right spot. Even though I'm at school and I'm here from like 6 to 9 at night, it didn't feel like it was this long class.
Right.
Um,
That always makes a huge difference. If you have teachers
yes.
who are super passionate about what they
Yeah.
do, it inherently just makes you
Yep.
more passionate.
They're lighting up, you're lighting up, it's
No
really
pun
fun.
intended.
Yeah, no, yeah, true. There you go. um, and at the same time, I will also mention, like, I was in the marching band for a long time, for 8 years. I was in the marching band at college, and the director of that band, also at the time, also had that vibe of just being super passionate about bringing people together
Mm,
and just making something awesome. And the band was 400 people, and so
wow.
we would get together and literally do exactly that, like foot
In formation.
yes,
Yeah.
in formation,
Yeah.
and you hit that chord together to the box, and it's like, oh my gosh, and you just get this feeling like in your bones, like, oh my gosh, we're making something so cool together.
Wow.
And we weren't getting paid. We weren't there for any other reason than to just create together.
Artistic expression.
Totally. So had the music thing, the art thing going on. I was just like, just loving it, just absolutely vibing in college. And then I started to get to some classes towards the end that were a little bit more like, not demo reel necessarily, but like, let's pull some people together and like, what do you want to do now? And like how, and I had some teachers that were teaching at our school, but also, I should mention, we had a 5 college consortium. So you could take classes
What a word.
I know, that's what they called it. I don't know what else to call it. And you could take classes for free at another school,
Oh,
like
cool.
kind of in place of one of your classes at your school. And so that also opened up, like I had 5 schools I could take classes at, which was amazing. And one of the other schools happened to be way more creative and artistic, and it just held everybody there together, and they were all doing film. And one of the department heads there had come from Pixar, so they had definitely had some animation
Aha.
stuff going on there.
Yeah.
They had something called like an artist incubator program, where they would have visiting artists come in with their ideas, their story ideas, and then they would, I guess, hire, the students as interns.
Mm.
You're not necessarily getting paid, but you could take it as like course credit or something like that. And so that's kind of what I got into. So once I figured out that this other school had a bunch of cool stuff I could do, I was like, okay, great. Now I'm going to try and go over to this place. And it was from those teachers coming to our school, teaching us, and then being like, what are you doing? And then they'd be like, oh, I actually teach over here. So they were working on a project at the time called Caldera. You can still find that on Vimeo today. It's a really, really cool project. It's absolutely gorgeous. And the story is really beautiful too. It tends to be more of an adult type animation, meaning like it has darker themes. It's not like, wasn't like Nickelodeon or Disney or anything.
Yeah, as most student-y films usually do.
Yes.
Yeah.
So these artists came in, they hired, I got hired, and it just so happened that they were on the lighting part of the pipeline. And so I got hired as a lighting compositor.
Wow.
It was really cool because for about a semester while we were all in school, there was a bunch of us, maybe 8 of us, kind of doing lighting compositing. And we were sort of teamed up. Like I think a lighter would have a compositor. I can't exactly remember, but I know there was like 8 of us. And then once school was letting out for the summer, the project itself was actually going through a phase where they're like, we need to change some shaders and we don't like exactly how this looks. Like they were making some look differences, like some big ones. And they had to kind of get rid of a bunch of stuff that we had already done.
Oh no.
A bunch of people left for the summer, but then I was like, I'm going to stay for the summer actually and just like work on this still.
Mm-hmm.
So then I think there was 3 or 4 of us at the end. So then it ended up being the 3 or 4 of us that like lit the entire project together.
Wow.
So I kind of ended up to get even more shots than I really originally anticipated.
Yeah.
And, those artists were like, I mean, we were generous with our time to the artists, but they were also generous with their time to us. And if we had questions or needed to sit down and like really pick their brain, they loved doing it. So we would sit down, and it was just one of the best summers I had. Like I would just go into the school every day, anytime I had, and we would just work on the film.
Yeah.
And it was, yeah.
Man, that's the only way to learn.
Yeah.
Is to just do it. Yeah.
Yep. And yeah, it was so cool. I was like, oh, I'm working on a film. This is so cool.
Yeah. And be around passionate people who are making a film, and now you can't help but be more passionate, just like those teachers.
Totally. Yeah, that's exactly right. And so yeah, that was one of those films that went off and ended up like it went to the film circuits, like the film festivals and all that. And I just like love sitting there and just seeing like the whole process like of them applying and all those things. And it was really cool. It went off. I'm pretty sure it won some awards, and it was a really like special film to work on.
That's so cool.
And
what
then
a great first experience.
Yeah. And then at that point I had shots that I did. So I had a demo reel now.
Yeah.
I didn't just have just my college stuff that was my own work. I actually had work that was like on a film, and I had gotten a credit. So that really kicked it off for me. So I'm always grateful to them. Evan Vieira and Chris Bishop, they were great mentors, and they continued on to mentor me after that project. Even they ended up moving out here to LA, and they were the ones that I called when I was like, should I move out here? What am I doing? You know?
Mm.
And they're like, yeah, I think you should move out here. So it was really cool to get
Wow.
to know them. Yeah, they were
Wow.
awesome guys.
Big influences.
Yeah,
That's great.
totally. And then after that, it was kind of like, again, I had a demo reel. So then I just was like, okay, more internships. So I
Right.
had a whole slew of internships that I worked at some great studios. And then, you know, at that point I had graduated college. And I moved to Boston, and I worked for Brickyard Visual Effects Studio, interning. They were more of like a marketing commercial studio. So I was able to see sort of a different style of animation, if you will. It wasn't so story based. Sometimes it was a little bit more like client based, like, you know, they're getting notes and you have to kind of apply
Right.
those notes.
Commercial animation.
Yes, commercial animation. But they were still doing some really cool things. And then they also had a kind of an affiliate studio kind of come in. It was really just like this one guy, General Gau's studio. He was responsible for Chester the Cheeto guy when he became 3D.
Yeah.
You know, he was 2D and then became 3D.
Mm-hmm.
So I was kind of there at the time when that character got made.
Yeah.
One of the interns actually rigged him, which was really cool. And yeah, so I didn't work on that project, but I worked on some other projects with them.
Wow.
And that's when I got some 3D, you know, a little bit more 3D work. And then one of the guys that had just started there at that company had just moved from LA to Boston. And he had worked at Zoic Studios. And he was like, I can get you an internship.
Oh.
And I was like, ooh, I've been wanting to move to LA. So he called them. He got me an internship. And so I moved out to LA. And that was kind of like, that was it. Like I packed up my car with like my clothes.
Yeah.
And I was like, bye, mom and dad. You know, like I'm going to LA.
How long after college was that? Like
maybe a year and a half or so.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, something like that.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, and I will mention, like, during all that time too, I had other jobs that I was like doing. I would try to do like more of a part-time thing with those jobs so that I could keep the other 2 days a week for interning. So I was like, I can work for you, but it's going to be 3 days a week. And then I'm going to intern 2 days a week, you know? So 3 days I'm getting paid, 2 days I'm not, kind of thing.
Yeah. You had your day jobs.
Yes.
And then, yeah.
But I was really fortunate. That job also, I actually went to that job at the time and I was like, I want to move to LA. Like, can I keep this job and like bring my laptop? And they were like, sure, do what you want to do. I was like, perfect. So I actually got to keep the job that I had in Boston and just keep working remotely in LA.
Wow.
So I'm like, great.
You were
now
the
I have
first remote worker.
Yeah. The first whatever.
Before it became standard.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I still think about that to this day. Like, I'm glad that all worked out because again, like always have like a backup thing kind of when you're getting into the animation industry or art in general, because it's nice to make money and be able to pay for the internships and all that.
Yeah, especially starting out. It's kind of a necessity.
You kind of do. Yeah.
I was a waiter. I was a busboy, a food runner. I was all those things.
Always have like 2 or 3 jobs at any point in time, just so you can supplement or just have extra money just in case.
Yeah.
So that was really cool. So I'd work at home 3 days a week, and then I was interning at Zoic Studios 2 days a week. Again, that was cool. Like I could be on set sometimes and like be a stand-in or do whatever.
Oh, so you actually got to be on set
a couple times.
Wow.
A couple times, yeah.
That's cool.
Yeah.
What was that like?
I was a stand-in for Alton Brown once. Like, I think he's the Food Network.
I know exactly who he is. I used to play him in home ec class.
I was like, I think I'm a little bit shorter than he is, but okay, like I'll stand here. Yeah. So
what was that like? Just being on a set for the first time?
It just intimidating. Like, I'm like, what am I doing here? You know, and all you're doing is standing there. Everyone else is doing work, so you feel like you're not doing anything. And you're like, but I'm just standing here, and it's awesome. You know?
Yeah.
They had a really cool machine at the time. They named it Zeus. It was basically a way that you could see. Do you know what I'm talking about?
I'm assuming it has something to do with lightning, but I'm not sure.
No.
Okay.
Well, it's a way that you can see on set, like the real time compositing, basically.
Oh, that's cool.
Yeah. So, you know, green screen stuff in the background, and they'll be able to actually, like, the actors and actresses that are on set are going to look at like a screen and actually see like what is the actual environment that I'm standing in. Like the thing he was like climbing up a mountain. Mm-hmm. You know, he's not really climbing up a mountain. He's climbing up like a little pile or whatever on a stage. And so that's the way that they can actually act a little bit easier to like see what's around them.
Mm-hmm.
That was a long time ago. I'm sure they have like way better technology. I'm calling out something that's like so old, but
That was
yeah,
the volume before the volume.
yeah, exactly. That's the
Yeah.
volume for the volume. So pretty cool that I mean, I was just seeing technology all the time that I had no idea what I was even looking at, but it
Right.
was really cool to just talk to people and just figure out like, what is this? What are we doing
Yeah,
here?
you're being exposed to so much
Yeah.
so quickly too, which
Yeah.
is cool and a great
Yeah.
learning experience, I'm sure.
It was,
Yeah.
yeah. I mean, there was a good portion of driving to get lunches and moving cars or doing things like that too. But, building furniture, lots of IKEA furniture.
Yes.
But they did allow us to also, we had like a group of interns. I think there was like 15 or 20 of us. And they kind of encouraged us to do a project together, which was interesting because I don't think anyone knew how to like do any production. Like we
Yeah.
didn't know how to work together really as a group yet, I don't think.
And Zoic, you were there for CG. You were doing CG stuff, but you ended up going on set for something that they
Right.
were working on. But now,
Right,
right?
yeah. We were more like moving around the studio and doing anything that anybody needed.
Yeah,
Like
right,
if clients are coming in, we're going to get things set up and make sure anybody has what they need, things
Mm-hmm.
like that. But if they did have a project and they really needed somebody, they'd be like, okay, you can work on this.
Ah,
And then once in a while, maybe once for me, it turned into like a small paid thing. Maybe one time.
mm-hmm.
But it was a lot of just like you're really there for the experience. You're there to see
Yeah.
what it looks like and to like it helps because then when you get to that type of place when you're actually getting paid, you're not going to embarrass yourself because you actually know what it looks like and you know how to like behave around people.
Yeah, you've seen the working environment.
Yeah. And how fast paced it can be because there's a lot going on and you really need to be helpful. Honestly, everyone needs to be helpful. So it was a great learning experience.
Wow.
But yeah, if anything too, like you get to know the other interns and you get to be friendly with them, and it's just nice to have more contacts in the field.
Yes.
And then that's kind of when I started. You talk to more of the artists there as time goes on, and I started looking back to see if I could go back to school because I was like, I think I need to like learn a few more things, like more software. I just didn't have quite the like fleshed out like education that I probably should have to like sit at a computer and do a full thing. So then I started talking to people at the studio. A lot of them had been basically they'd work throughout the day and then they'd go to Gnomon school at night and they'd teach.
Mm.
And so that's when I learned about the school and I looked it up online. They had like a 96% hiring rate at the time out of graduation. And I was
Wow.
like, that's a really good percentage.
That's
like,
really high.
I think I'd like that percent. And it was really cool. The idea was that every single teacher that taught there worked in the industry at the time.
Yes.
So you're getting the most relevant information that you could possibly get. Like they just came off of set or they just came out of the studio and now they're going to teach you from 6 to 9 at night or on a Saturday.
Yeah, it's the best.
It's the best. Yeah.
SVA was that too. Where I
Yeah.
went to college was the same thing.
That's cool.
They had part-time professors. So it was
Yep.
they work a day job and then they came to teach
It's what
us.
you want.
Yeah.
You also get the network
Yes.
without having to try.
Oh yeah.
Because you're now you're just kind of working with this person, this teacher, and they can, if they have something open up at their studio, they can recommend people.
Right. And it teaches you to be a nice person
Be a nice
early on
person.
too,
Yes.
because
Do your work.
Yeah,
Like-
because you have to make
Yeah.
a good first impression.
Yep.
Yeah. Even starting in school all the way through. That's the beginning of the career now.
It is, and they would even say like if you're here for 2 years, that's kind of like 2 years in this in the field. Like you can put
Mm.
on your resume that like it's kind of like you work 2 years in the field because it's true, it is. And you have just a ton of work to do. Like they really stacked up the classes, and I was in school all the time. That was kind of like a 2 years of my life that I really put my head down and just like did my work to make sure
Yeah.
that I built up the demo reel. I knew
Mhm.
why I was there. I knew that I even wanted to do lighting at that point. So I knew that like I was there to do my work and
Yeah.
to make sure I had a reel at the end. And
Yeah,
that
you
was
were
the whole
hyper
point.
focused.
Yeah, 100%.
That's awesome.
And everyone that went to school there was the same. They all a lot of people there loved like creature modeling. They loved building characters. They loved doing all the other parts that I didn't really like to do.
There you
So I
go.
was like, oh, this is perfect. You make the characters, you rig them, I'll light them, composite them. Yeah, so it ended up being pretty cool because then, you get some really cool projects out of that.
That's always a good thing too. It's not that you don't have to seek out, niche jobs or, whatever you want to
Yep.
call them, the job that not everybody is doing, but it just happens to work out.
Yep.
If you find something that you're passionate about, that isn't the job that everybody wants,
Yeah, totally. And that was the case. I think a lot of the times when people start in animation, that you have to start in modeling to have anything.
Right.
Right. You can't rig without a model. You can't light without a model, you know?
True.
And so a lot of people at Noman would start off modeling and they would just be like, this is awesome. And it is, and it was. But I was already a few departments down the line being like, you model, I'll light, you know? Like I like what you do and you're going to like what I do kind of thing.
Yeah. I think modeling and animation are kind of the two things that are the broad categories that everybody who goes into animation goes very quickly learns, like, oh, these are kind of my two paths. Either I make an asset, I create a character, I create a set, or I animate the character. Yeah. And then it's like, wait, but there's also 25 other jobs that you could do.
Asset creation, but shot production.
Right.
Yeah. So that was really cool. And it was just like the school itself was a cool experience.
Yeah.
And then after that, like you have a whole demo reel and now you're pretty hireable.
And you have your work from the short that you did before you even came out there.
Yep.
Plus you have your work now that you've put your head down for 2 years to make.
Yep.
And then.
Yeah. And then, as I said, like the percentage rate of hiring was really high. One of the things that sort of made that so was they had a lot of, I think we just called them like open houses or expos or things like that, where when you were done and you graduated, you could like go to one of these events and like show off your work to all the people that are coming to hire out of LA. Yeah. Perfect. So of course there was someone from Disney there. And of course I was like, hey. Yeah. And it was really cool. It was, and I loved meeting her. She gave me a couple notes and I was like, oh, I just got notes from Disney. This is so cool. And so I do
Was that Dory?
It was Dory.
Hey, we love Dory.
It was Dory. And I think I would say that she probably remembered me and remembered my name and remembered my work because she gave me some notes. I took those notes and I did them. Yep. And then I applied again. Yeah. Super important to do that. Absolutely. Take the notes. I did it. And then I sent that, same reel in, but better. And she called me, maybe 4 or 5 months later, because I applied to the trainee program. I should mention that. Right. The trainee program at Disney. At Disney. Yeah. Yep. And then she called me and I nearly crashed my car when I found out. She'd be mortified. Yeah. No, I didn't. I pulled over. I pulled over. I was safe. I was safe. I took her call, but I knew, like, I was just really excited to talk to her. And she was like, yeah, you got hired for the training program. And I was like, no way. Wow. Yeah. So that was a cool day. Yeah. That's a super cool day. It was. Yeah. You got the same call. I did get the same call. Yeah. I think I might have been driving too. Really? I think so. She just knows when we're all on the road, I guess. Yeah. I was in Atlanta though, because I had just started doing visual effects previs and I had gotten sent down there and was working on Infinity War down there. Very cool. And then I got the phone call on the way home after work and I was like best day ever. Yeah. I was like, this is the best day ever. This my dream job is calling me. Yeah. And then, but I was literally working on this one. I was working on the other one and I was like, kind of torn, but there was a lot happening. But anyway, it was the most exciting day ever. Yeah. Yeah. And then, I mean, honestly, that kicked off our friendship. Yes. We were in the same trainee class. Yep. Every year that they do it, they bring in like 3 to 5 trainees, students that are coming in right out of college, and they're going to train them up in how to work at Disney, basically, right? Exactly. Yeah. And you go through a process of 3 months of training and then 6 months of apprenticeship where you're on the show and you're actually working on a show, getting shots. And then after that, they kind of, you go from there and you decide if you're going to become an artist or not. And you came in the lighting department. Yes. And I came in the lighting department. Yeah. I was one of 8. And, it was super cool. Like the way they kind of set it up is pretty awesome because right off the bat, you're not only meeting people in your department, but you're meeting people in other departments that also came in as trainees. So again, that's how we met. They kind of put you all in one big room together, a pod, if you will, and you just all mingle and you get to know like what are the other departments doing and right and there's a bit of a waterfall, I guess, if you will. So. Layouts first and then lighting's one of the last. Right. Yep. I was a layout trainee. Yep. Yeah. So you just kind of like you watch all of the other trainees go through the process and then you're like, okay, lighting's up. Let's go. Like it's time to go into production. And it was really cool. We unfortunately had a little bit of a different experience with the apprentice part of the program. Right. Because as you know, productions change. Yes. And the one we were on did change.
It did change.
It did change.
That's true.
It got pushed by months. And so right after the trainee portion of it, the 3 months of it, we did have to leave,
Right.
which was disappointing. But then I ended up getting brought back months later with one of the other lighters, and we ended up lighting on the actual movie. And that first movie was Ralph Breaks the Internet.
Yep.
So yeah, that was my first Disney movie ever.
Yeah. And what a windy road even to get there. That was
Yes, that was a very long
but it's true. It was definitely, we all came in as trainees, and
Yep.
yeah, the other part of becoming a trainee is you become friends with those people for like 10 years. That's kind of the baseline. It's not normally the case where they'll bring in trainees and that they don't actually get to go right onto the film.
Yeah.
We had a specific circumstance where like the film got pushed like 6 months or something. And then,
it was an off year. Like that was not the typical scenario.
Yeah.
Typically you move right into apprenticeship and you work on the film.
Right.
So
what was it like when you finally got to work in the department at Disney?
It was really cool. You just learn so much so fast.
Yeah.
Obviously there's moments where it's really intimidating, like going into dailies for the first time. It's like, you're kind of sweating a little and you're like, oh my gosh, you're getting your first set of notes, and it does feel like, should I be here? But
imposter syndrome.
Yeah, tons of that. But, everyone's so inclusive. They really want you to be there. And I would say of all the studios I've worked at, it's probably the most collaborative. I would say everybody helps each other out like as much as they possibly can. And that's just like one of the best parts of it. And, trainees too, like we're all helping each other. But the artists there are also donating a lot of their time, and they're helping you like level up all the time. So it was really fun. Again, like you just learn so much so fast. Getting your first like few shots done just feels like the coolest thing ever.
Yeah.
Like you're just like, yes, I got an approval. And then after you get the approval, there's tech check and you have to do more.
Right. Yeah, that's true.
But yeah, it's really cool. It's really cool to like be with the directors, and they're moving all day from like department to department, and hearing them like give such specific lighting notes. It's like, wow, like everyone really knows their stuff.
Yeah. Yeah.
And it's really thoughtful. It's a really thoughtful place to work. So yeah, it was a great experience. It flew by, as you can imagine.
Yes.
It's just so like, you just feel like, wait, I just started, on this project.
Yeah.
And then all of a sudden it's done.
Right. Yeah. You finish your first shot and you're like, I did a shot that's going to be in a Disney movie. It's done. I did it.
It's insane.
I worked on it. And then, you finish the film and you're like, I finished my first Disney.
Yeah.
It happens so quickly.
Yeah, it does.
Collectively, you've worked at Disney for about how long now?
This coming August, or so in a few months, it'll be like 8 years.
Wow.
Yeah. On and off for 8 years, but yeah.
Right. And what are the films that you've gotten to work on during your time there?
Ooh, you're gonna make me name them all.
Well, they don't have to be all of them, but maybe what's one that you're the proudest of to have worked on, or maybe some shots that you're proudest of to have lit?
I think probably Encanto was my favorite film.
Me too.
I think most of us would say that. It's really magical. I think so much of it, it just really hits home for a lot of people. It's just one of those where it's like, it shows off so many different character types and how they work together as a group, or sometimes don't.
Right.
And that's really interesting to me, just as a story point too. That was actually one of the films where I started actually doing a little bit more of the key lighting. So a lot of times when you start off, someone else is kind of setting up a certain area of the lighting. So if one character's standing in like one area, if they're just like in a corner, one artist is going to set up what that looks like for that character to be standing in that corner, what all the background looks like, all the props, how everything's lit. And then they pass down a bunch of like what we call the packet shots to a bunch of shot artists, and they'll sort of take it over and take all of those shots to the finish line.
So they'll all be matching that key light that you would set up.
Yeah. You have to make them all look as close as possible, because you need to believe that it's all happening at the same time and that we're not lighting it,
Right. Making it all look like one person did it.
Yes, exactly. And sometimes you do. I mean, sometimes especially if it's a smaller sequence of shots or smaller packet of shots and we have a lot of time, maybe someone will actually take that whole corner of shots and do the entire thing themselves. It really just completely depends on every show, the timing that we have, the production itself, everything, honestly. But that was the first time that I started to do like some of the key shots and actually like pick a spot, pick the and like light it myself.
So cool.
Yeah, it was really special. Like it's one of those times where you start to like step out as yourself, and you're taking the color key, which is usually like a painted image from art direction. They're handing you a color key, and you have that to follow to make sure that you hit all the like lighting notes and all the colors that they want basically
Yeah.
in that shot.
All the highlights on the face,
Yep.
all the what's going on in the background.
And the basic like colors, you know, because as you remember, like Encanto has every character has these different colors, themes,
right.
and so you need to kind of stick in that theme to some degree.
Yeah, Bruno with the green. And,
Yep.
To kind of hint that he's a villain, but not, you know,
but not really.
But surprise.
Yeah, exactly. But yeah, those colors are really meaningful. So that was the first time I got to kind of take a packet of shots and do it myself.
Yeah.
I would say one of the, and this was also just like a really magical moment. So I just like absolutely loved it. But, and I guess I should say this is a spoiler alert. So if you haven't seen Encanto,
spoiler alert. Yeah.
Don't listen to this part. Maybe fast forward a little bit. So it was one of the parts where baby Mirabelle, like it's like a flashback, and she's walking up the stairs. When she gets up to the stairs, she's standing in front of her door, and she's about to receive her door. But as you know, she does not receive her door, and it's a very emotionally weighted moment.
Yes.
And so, and I had like, 6 to 8 shots in that area where she's not getting the door. And what happened was I worked really closely with the effects artist, Bruce, right? At the time. And so that was the first time that I got to work really closely with effects and be like, okay, what are you doing? And how can I use those effects to supplement what I'm doing? And what we were seeing was her reaction to what was happening to the door. But we're seeing the character's reaction. It's going back and forth, but you're seeing it mostly in her eyes. And she also has glasses, so you're seeing it in her reflection of her glasses. So you're kind of seeing it twice. And we needed to, that's a moment where you need to not make it look too busy, but you need to actually still show off what's happening with the door to make sure that we're seeing that it's literally going away. Like her dream is disintegrating in front of her eyes. And it also, her door itself is this really warm, glowy, orangey, yellowy light. And then kind of the entire environment is this like deeper purple or like a bluish purple, which tends to be a little bit more emotionally sad, a depressed color, if you will. And warms are, of course, they're warm. They bring you up their happy colors. So what's happening is you're literally seeing the warmth like drain off, from her and off of her body. And, you're also seeing Abuela's colors go from warm to cool. And yeah, you're seeing not only the reaction on her face, but again, like the effects are literally draining off of her face and out of her glasses and out of her eyes. And the whole moment is really sad. And, when I remember taking it into director review, and everyone in the room was kind of like, oh no, like everyone's so sad. And at the time, like I had a split second of like, oh no, they don't like the shot. But then I was like, wait, no, that's exactly what I wanted. That's exactly what I wanted them to feel like. And, usually if the people in the room, like us as artists, if we're feeling some type of way about a sequence of shots like that, it's going to come through with the audience. Yeah. And so I remember being like, yes, like I nailed it. Like that's exactly what they wanted. And I gave it to them. So that's one of my favorite like packet of shots that I've done.
And you did nail it. That's a beautiful moment. That is such a great moment in that movie. Yeah.
Yeah. I really enjoyed that part. It was really cool. Special.
So cool. Yeah. And it really speaks to what we were just talking about, joking about Bruno and the colors and how much color actually plays a part in the emotion of a scene.
Oh yeah.
It's kind of massive how much the color choice actually affects how you feel when you watch it.
Yeah. Oh, it does. I think it's actually kind of crazy to think about. Like there was one sequence I can talk about. This is not a Disney thing, but I can talk about one sequence where I noticed that myself, like as I was studying lighting more and more. I actually had a moment where like an epiphany where I was like, oh, I'm noticing the lighting like right now, like sitting in the theater, like watching it and being like, I'm noticing it. So I'm about to talk about The Force Awakens. This is another spoiler moment. So again, sorry.
We're going to put spoiler in the title.
Yeah.
That's
just giving spoilers.
Spoilers, yeah.
So you'll have to fast forward again if you have not seen The Force Awakens. I'm about to talk about.
If you haven't seen The Force Awakens.
Yeah, if you haven't seen it, stop this video and go watch it like immediately. But I did have a moment, like it was like the climax of the movie. It's the part where they're on the bridge. It's Han Solo and Kylo Ren.
Yeah, big spoiler coming up.
Big spoiler. So like, actually though, turn this off. Basically what's happening is they're both coming up the bridge. They're standing across from each other. It's a bunch of two shots. and they're both lit with red and blue light. So we
Hmm.
got the light, the dark. And both characters are kind of living in that moment of like good and bad and good and evil, you know, like they're really torn. You can tell like when a character's really torn, they usually have a couple colors on their face. And so that whole time when they're going back and forth, specifically I was watching Kylo's face and the lighting on his face, and he has blue and red both times. There's a moment where he, after it comes back from Han's shot, it comes back to Kylo, his lighting goes to completely flood red.
Hmm.
He takes his saber, he hands it over to Han Solo, and then Hans puts his hands on it. It cuts back again. You still see Kylo in the red, and then he presses the button, and boom, Han Solo's dead. And I remember being like, whoa, I actually just watched like the lighting tell me how to feel.
Yes.
And I remember knowing exactly what he was going to do before it even happened, because I knew from based on the lighting, he's going evil. He's going full evil. Yeah. And I actually I was watching it with my older brother, who's also a film buff, Steve. And I turned to him in the theater, and I was like, oh, and he thought I was just like going, whoa, about like the moment that just happened.
Right.
But then after we got to the theater, I was like, did you see that? And he's like, what? You know, and I had to be like, the lighting.
You're like,
so yeah.
I knew it was coming.
Yeah.
I knew it was coming.
Yeah. And of course, you know, I mean, probably anybody could have known it was coming, but like they put it specifically in the lighting.
Right.
And I was like,
well, they did it so
yeah.
you can feel it. It's
Yep.
that whether somebody knows that inherently
Yep.
like you did, or if somebody is watching it, we all know it inherently in our gut.
It's subconscious.
It's subconscious,
Yep.
right? And you're watching it and you go, oh, something feels off.
Yeah.
But what the thing is that feels off is they're telling us,
Yeah.
they're signaling to us what's about to happen.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I should probably go look up who actually lit that shot. I'm sorry, I don't have a name right now, but whoever lit that shot, the team of people, I'm sure, like,
yeah.
amazing, just amazing.
Amazing.
So good. Ugh, what a
So
moment.
good. What a great moment.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's
And I just remember, like, I recall being like, oh, this is the first moment that I like actually noticed the lighting. Like I actually saw it happen in front of my eyes.
yeah.
Before it would have been subconscious, but now I'm always looking for it. So.
Yeah. Man, so cool. And now you're doing it. Now
Yeah.
you're
I'm
implementing
trying,
that
yeah.
into your everyday job.
Yeah, for sure. Definitely trying to.
So speaking of that, have there been any other projects that you've gotten to work on where you felt like color has been, has had a big effect other than that scene in Encanto?
I would say working on Raya and the Last Dragon, I think we tried something a little bit different with the lighting. This isn't so much about color as it is about like we also use atmosphere too to sort of wash out backgrounds or, pull focus.
Yeah.
And we did a lot more silhouetting than we would have ever done in a Disney movie. Our characters are typically well lit, like
Right.
we can see the acting. And that one we actually took away color and light a lot of the times. Like we actually restricted ourselves a lot on using lights, and it would be a lot of silhouetting up against like a atmosphere, that might be like a dark teal or something like that. And so you're still getting the color wash in the back, but it's somewhere else, and then now the environment becomes a character
Right.
in addition to the characters being characters. So
Yeah. I always heard people say that Raya felt the most like a live action film.
Yep,
And that was
true.
the goal, was
Exactly.
from cinematography, both
Yep.
lighting and layout.
Exactly.
Because it's
Yeah,
kind
I know.
of
We need
it's
to talk
kind of a
about that.
two-hander. It really is.
That's actually like a really good segue to talk about how like lighting and layout works together, because
Yeah.
they do. I would say on set it's one person doing kind of that job.
True.
In charge of it.
Mm-hmm.
And then in animation, we actually have director of cinematography for layout and director of cinematography for
For
lighting.
Yeah.
And they actually work hand in hand before the show even starts, way before it starts,
Right.
to make sure that we're going to work together to actually create that look, to create the mood we're going for.
Yeah. As a layout artist, we're working on shots at the very beginning of the process where we're kind of setting up scenes. And, when we're figuring out our compositions to tell the best story, we are also thinking ahead and going, okay, what's going to be the best composition lighting wise too?
It's a really cool partnership to watch. And it is cool how sometimes we get all the way down to lighting and we still have to make layout changes to camera or what have you.
Oh, yeah.
And they'll take that on like happily, like, yep, okay, pass the camera back to us. We'll fix it. We'll do it. And we'll send it back to you.
Yeah.
And I think that's super cool. Like,
Yeah, that's the shame of us not being able to work at the same time.
yeah, exactly.
But
It'd
at
be
least
great if
there
we could
is
do
that back and forth where
Yeah.
it's eventually going to get
Yep.
to that final beautiful composition.
Yep.
So that's another thing that we have in common, is both of our departments are the cinematography departments. We were both trainees, and we both also had an experience that is called short-term hires, which is, well, I'll let you kind of explain that.
This happens at a lot of studios, but I guess I can just speak to Disney specifically. After you kind of work on your first film, a lot of the times there isn't really a whole lot of space in the department. And, once that project ends, there isn't a project that starts up right after. Usually there's some time in between.
Right.
And they can't keep all of us. It's a lot to keep a bunch of artists kind of just sitting around, not necessarily doing a project. So a lot of artists do have to leave after a project ends. It's kind of what's called short-term hire. You're getting hired for a project.
Right.
And again, that happens across the industry, but just specifically with Disney, like you kind of have a really good sense of like when the project's going to end. We have slate dates for the theaters. And so, it in the fall, that project's going to end. And a lot of people end up leaving the production.
Right. And that's the film industry in general kind of runs
Yeah.
that way. People get hired for a movie, and then the chances of them getting hired on again after it, that doesn't really happen as much in the live action industry. You just kind of go with the people that you have because it's not like a defined studio. In animation, It's like, we have our day job of animation, which is also us making movies.
Yep.
So it's kind of this weird, like, and you can look back at the history of Disney animation and all the people that came in, those were usually people who would be lifers. They would go,
Right.
They'd get hired and then they'd be there until they retired.
Right.
And
the studio was very much building up at that point still too.
yes.
So they really could just keep adding.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, now we're in a state of how many people can you really add?
Right.
You
And that's
can't keep filling
changed.
up the building.
Yeah.
And so that is kind of one of the things that we do have to deal with. A lot of the times you're ending after a project or after that show ends, you're done. And then you kind of move on and you have to find something else that's going to fill in the blanks of that time, not knowing if you are or not going to come back to that same studio, if you're not going to come back to Disney.
Right.
And it's hard to know. Sometimes they know if they need people back the next time. Sometimes they just don't know at all. So it's really kind of up in the air. I would say specifically with lighting, I think a lot of the times they do know if they're going to need people for the next show, and they normally do. So sometimes they'll give you a little bit of a heads up, like we're going to start up again in 6 months. We'll call you then, kind of thing.
Right.
Which is great to know, because then you can kind of plan your next project, like what you're doing in between, and just fill in the blanks, if you will, or work on something else and get some more experience somewhere else, and then come back to the studio.
If that's what you want to do.
If that's what you want to do.
Yeah.
And it totally depends. Like not everyone wants to do that. Sometimes they want to move on and work in live action a little bit more.
Yeah.
It really just depends on who wants to do what.
Yeah. But it is the nature of how it kind of goes, of the industry.
Yeah, totally. So at that point I left after the first one, after Rough Breaks the Internet. I left the studio and I went to work at a couple other studios, had a couple freelance things here and there. And then I worked with this company called Day for Night. We did pre-viz, which I know you've talked about on this channel before. And we also did post-viz, so pre-viz comes before the cameras get on set and shoot anything.
Yeah.
Post-viz comes after
right.
the cameras get out and shoot. And after you have plates, then you actually start to put in some of the visual effects elements in a temp environment to make sure that you actually know, like, what are the artists going to do? What does it look like? And then you can also just make bids and you can understand how expensive it's going to be, things like that. And there's a bit of a compositing process. I talked about compositing earlier. So it kind of lended itself nicely for me to do some of that work.
Yeah, because now you're taking the things that they shot, plus that you're putting in 3D characters or whatever it is, and trying to make it look like a fast version of, okay, they're all in one environment. So now the bigger studios or whatever can go and they make the final looking Iron Man and whoever it is.
Yep. And if they need to do any reshoots because they missed something or they didn't get something quite right, that's a good point for them to go, okay, we haven't actually put in the really expensive visual effects yet.
Right.
Let's hop back to set and do some, pickup shots or whatever they need to do.
Yeah. Will this work? And you guys are the ones who go, yes, it will work.
Right.
Here it is.
Or we'll make it work.
Or we'll make it right. Yeah. We'll make it work. Yeah.
Yeah. We're the fix it in post.
Yes.
It's true.
Should have gotten hats.
Yeah.
Fix it in post.
So it was actually pretty cool. So, there's a sense of like, oh, it's a little bit of a bummer to leave, like, your dream job, I guess. But at the same time, you get to go off to a different studio, meet a whole bunch of cool people, work on a completely different experience, a different project. Working in live action is a whole different beast than working in animation. I think something that's a big difference between live action and animation is that live action kind of everyone's from everywhere, and sometimes you have a lot of different production companies that are all working together to create something, and you're not necessarily all even in the same country.
Right. Yeah.
But in animation, in Disney, everyone's kind of working under the same hat. They're
Right.
working under the same building. And so it's really easy in animation to just walk up to someone's office and say, hey, can you fix this, or can we talk about this?
Mm-hmm.
Whereas live action is a little bit different. There's a bunch more work that needs to be done to make sure that you kind of get that working.
True. Communication work.
Yes,
Yeah.
communication. Production is key. The production team, they're great.
Yes.
I worked for this again, day for night, and we did some post viz. We did some interesting projects. Like, luckily enough, I actually got put on a bunch of Disney, like Walt Disney Pictures projects, which was pretty cool. So some of the remakes that we've done, I got to work on Mulan.
Right.
And what is cool is that a couple of the people that I got to work with in the lighting trainee program, I actually got to work with them at this other company in a live action environment, doing different work, but I still knew them. And so you still have that rapport of like, I know you, I kind of know what you know.
Yeah.
And we can still work together, like based on how we worked in the past.
It's that same pool of people that kind of moves from job to job.
Totally.
Yeah. Once you get into the industry, that's kind of what the industry becomes.
Yeah. And that's why people always say it's such a small industry. It's
Yeah.
because you're literally working with the same people like over and over again.
Same people, different buildings.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah.
So that was cool. And again, just like a cool experience to be able to work on something a little bit different.
Cool learning experience too in between. Just like, okay, we're just doing something post-viz.
Yep.
All right, let's do that.
Yeah,
let's learn what that is.
And sometimes the projects, if it's that early on, especially if it's previs, sometimes the projects don't actually end up getting made. Like sometimes they figure out this doesn't actually work. The story doesn't work. This doesn't work for this reason. I don't know. It's gonna be too expensive. We lost the budget.
Yeah.
So sometimes you are actually seeing things that no one's really going to see.
True.
You actually get to see some cool stuff.
Yeah. Previs is like storyboarding in that way too, where it's that we're constantly throwing away stuff too.
Yeah.
Totally. you try things out. If they're not working, next.
Yeah. You got to
do this. Try this shot instead of that shot. Yeah. And then you end up throwing a lot out that way.
It is hard.
Yeah. It's a stark difference though, probably from lighting, because lighting, like, well, maybe not. But I would think that it would be, because at that point it's already gone through so many departments that by the time it gets to lighting, it'd be
typically
more expensive to throw it out.
It is.
Yeah.
But it does still happen.
It does still happen.
Yes. Yeah. That is correct. Yeah. And again, like I mentioned on the short film that I worked on right at the beginning, they don't know to even think about that really. They get all the way to lighting and then they think, oh, wait, we don't like the textures or this or that.
Yeah.
And then you do have to get rid of it anyway. So it really depends. But, Disney's done this for years and years. And so they do have a sense of like, we can't get this far without knowing if it's actually going to work. Like
sure. Yeah.
3 departments ahead,
Yeah.
So
yeah. Yeah. That time is a short-term hire. I think for me, I felt like, because I did the exact same thing. Ralph ended, Wreck-It Ralph 2 ended. I worked on that, and then I left the studio, and then I ended up at Blue Sky Studios over in Connecticut, and I kind of bounced around all across the United States actually, but bouncing from studio to studio, it was a learning experience, just like at the start of your career, I think, where you were kind of doing different internships and all that stuff. You're learning how different people work and interact in other workplaces, and learning new tool sets, learning new jobs
100%.
entirely.
Yep.
And I think that stuff all is useful and valuable, that you can bring it back to your job.
Yeah, that's exactly right. And you do pick up a lot. Like it's great to also kind of, if they want to help, the more experienced people on a project, if you can sort of come across, their desk and, hey, can you show me how you did this or that? And if they're willing to show you, they will. And you take that right back to the group that you came from, or your next job, wherever you're going. And now you have something valuable to share with other people.
Right.
And it's actually like, it's a really collaborative industry for the most part.
Right. And makes you more valuable technically,
totally.
Because you're, Yeah.
And it just goes back to that sense of like working together as a team, and everyone has to do their part to like make something actually magical come to life, Yeah. So it's a cool feeling. But I will say one of the things with the short-term hire kind of situation that I was in there for a while, I was always trying to be really transparent about, I do think I want to go back to Disney. I think that what's going to happen is they're going to call me during this month.
Yeah.
And I think I'm going to probably go back. And so specifically with Day for Night, there was a couple of times where I left Disney, went to Day for Night, went back to Disney, went back to Day for Night, you know, went
Yeah.
back to Disney. And I was very clear every time with them, like, I would like to go back for this. So if
Yeah.
you could find me a project that lasts from this time to this time or whatever, you know, if you have 2 in that time, great, I'll work on 2. And they were completely fine with it. And I think just having
That's awesome.
transparency
Yeah.
and like communicating that to your supervisor or whoever it is, that helps them and it helps you.
Totally. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. It probably depends on the situation too. Those guys seem like they're very cool.
They're amazing.
Very,
Yeah.
very nice group. So yeah, you assess the situation,
Yeah,
but I
you
think,
do.
I think
Exactly.
starting with that first with, you know, going,
Yeah.
I'm going to be as open and transparent with them as possible, especially if you have a goal. You're like,
Yeah.
I want to work at Disney and be there. And that's
Yeah.
it. You know, like, I think it's good that you told
I
them.
mean, hey, you saw my demo reel. You saw it was lighting. You know, what do you want me to do? Like, so
Yeah, that's true.
yeah. But they were always cool about it, and they always enjoy when I was there, and they liked the work that I did, and I just made sure to work as hard as I could when I was there. Like, I'm still there to do a job. I'm still there to work really hard.
Yeah.
But yeah, I just think the more you can communicate what exactly is going on,
Yeah.
everybody really, it helps everybody to do that.
Totally. When I left the studio, I think I had all those preconceived notions about, the studio, people have been around there forever. And, you know, there's this like, that's what it is. And then you go and it kind of, you realize like, this is how the whole industry kind of operates. And it does take a moment as an artist to kind of go, oh, it's not me. It's, you know, and like you're going, it's not, you have to kind of reassess your self-worth and go, okay,
Yeah. So true.
It's not me. I didn't do anything wrong. That's not why this is happening. It's just the nature of how the industry goes. And it's every single studio does it in some form or another, just because that's how they stay in business. So it's the understanding of that, while, you know, also being able to internally be like,
Yeah.
you know,
this is not happening because of me. Like,
give yourself the confidence to
Yeah.
know that you are a valuable,
Right.
amazing artist. And, you know,
yeah, they give you a great review and then they ask you to leave. That has nothing to do with you.
right.
You know?
Yes,
Like,
exactly.
It's just the way that the studio has to run.
Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah.
it is what it is, but
It is. But
is
it is
still
the
tough.
nature. It's the
Yeah.
nature of the industry. And it's something that I don't think a lot of people who want to get into it know going into it.
Yeah.
And then once you get here, you're like, oh, that's different. Okay.
Yep.
Different than what I thought it would be.
you have to be really good with rejection in the industry.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it is entertainment, right?
Yeah.
We're working in entertainment, and I think that's unfortunately that's what comes with it.
You're
We
gonna
thought-
you're gonna send that demo reel out
Yeah.
again and again and again.
It's
and
true.
You won't even get a response, but you have to keep sending it out because you
Yes.
never know when someone's just gonna be like, okay, I need you now. Sometimes you send a demo reel in, you know, in January, and then someone's gonna hit you up in March or
Right.
June and be
Yeah,
like,
yeah.
we're starting a project, we could use you now, and you're like, who's this?
Who's this?
You know, yeah.
I forgot I
Who
applied. What is
are
this?
you? Yeah. But that's the way it goes. And
Disney?
it's honestly like Gosh.
Sorry, bad joke.
Like honestly, the more you kind of get your name out there, the more that you end up on everybody's list for like when a project's coming up, they'll call you because they already looked through all your stuff.
Yeah, yeah. And that's a good time too with networking. Like I feel like
Yeah.
you
Yeah.
start putting out, you'll start putting out demo reels, or you'll start reaching out to people who are in recruiting, and you kind of build like real relationships with them, especially when you do something like what you were doing, where you got feedback from a recruiter and then you sent back, hey, look,
Mhm.
I did the feedback.
Yep.
And I agreed with your note and I did it.
Yep.
And they go, oh my God, great.
Yeah.
Perfect. That's exactly what you're going to be doing in the industry.
Yep.
So you're kind of a perfect candidate for
Yeah,
this.
exactly. They do look for those things. They know what they're doing.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, they're looking for that. It's not just your art. It's not just your ability. It's also you as a person.
Yep.
Like, can you take notes? Can you
100%.
be open to that? You
Yeah.
know?
Can you collaborate? Because that's the entire industry is constantly collaborating with other people.
Yeah.
Every single day, all day. So you do have to be able to do that all the time.
Yeah, totally true.
So get used to it now because you'll be doing it.
Yeah, and that's why it's extra important to be nice.
Yes. Always be nice.
That's such a great example. Star Wars. It was so good.
Oh, thanks. I just talked about that recently with someone. Like, I don't know, we were doing some kind of cinematography thing at work. And I
Yeah.
was like messaging James on the side, James Lojo.
Yeah,
I was
yeah,
like,
yeah.
oh, I remember this thing. And I sent him the like video and I was like, check this out. And he's like, okay, I know,
Yeah,
like,
I love that movie, by the way.
yeah,
Force
it's a great
Awakens.
movie.
It's
Yeah.
so good, and I felt like I think a lot of people liked it when it came out because it was like this promise of something else, and then the
Yeah.
other two movies, but that first movie, I
was
was like,
great.
this is great, and they're like, yeah,
Yeah.
but it's Star Wars again. I'm like, it is, but
It's
it's kind of
fine.
cool that
Yeah.
it's this like callback to history because history repeats itself.
I
Like,
wasn't there when, like, I didn't really watch the movies until later, so like much later, like, admittedly, like when I moved here, like,
oh wow,
yeah. So
yeah,
then
yeah,
it was like new, it was like an experience for me
yeah,
to be like, okay, I'm ready. Like, I watched all of them, like,
right.
I'm ready to go. Yeah.
Yeah, and
Like,
it's
I didn't
just
know about Luke and Leia. How stupid is that?
Right.
You know?
You're like, I didn't watch
And then I watched it
the
and I was
number
just like,
6.
oh, what? Like, that was like life changing.
Yeah, that one's a big spoiler too.
Yeah.
That's so funny. But yeah, that movie just I remember it so much, like the chase with the Millennium Falcon and everything. I was
Yeah.
just like, this is how you shoot
Yeah.
a flying
It's
chase
JJ,
sequence.
like, what do you expect? Like,
Yeah, it's so good.
So good.
Lens flares everywhere, but it's so good.
I'll just eat it up all day.
Eating lens flares.
Eat it up.
Delicious.
Taste it.
Taste the rainbow.
Yeah. I want to taste the rainbow. I want every color in a film.
Are there any types of scenes that you haven't gotten to lit, but that you'd like to light? Like a villain scene?
Yes, I would do. Well, I've done a villain scene. I will say that one of the things I haven't got to do a lot of is the musical sequences,
Oh,
which I really want to do.
which is funny working at Disney. You're like,
Yes,
I haven't
I
gotten to
know.
work on too many musicals.
I worked on a couple, like, sort of, let's call them one-off shots
Yeah.
on the Olaf song in Frozen 2.
Oh, cool.
That one was really cool too because I actually got to work with a 2D artist on those shots because we were doing some projected shadows
Yeah.
that were like literally hand drawn from somebody frame to frame. And so I got to actually take those frames and project them onto, it was like a rock wall and it was projected onto it. And then I have to sort of emulate that spotlight as if it's casting from Olaf to the rock,
Yeah.
which it wasn't. It was just the 2D shadow, but I got to kind of like, there was 2 shots in succession. He's like kind of going through some brush, like some bushes or whatever it is. And yeah, so that was cool to be able to like take the 2D art. Cause I got to, go up to the animation department for a little while and like pretend to be like in that department.
Who did you work with in animation?
Trent.
Oh, Trent.
Yeah. He was the animation soup on that sequence. And then it was Rachel Bibb.
Yeah.
That always does the 2D.
Rachel's amazing.
So every time she's like on a shot, I'm like, can I have that shot? But I got those 2. And that was a musical sequence, but it was just those 2 shots in that sequence. But it would be super cool to like work on more musical sequences. It's always just fun. I think, we have kind of a little bit more naturalistic lighting, or we kind of, it's just more, it's just a bit more, yeah, I guess natural is the word for it.
It's more pushed.
Well, yeah, so the musical ones are more stage lit versus like what we normally do, which is a little bit more natural.
Oh, okay.
And so with musical sequences, you get a lot more leeway. Like, there's sequences where you just fade to the background to black completely and
Yes,
you get like spotlights or like reindeer heads, singing. And I've seen those sequences go through and they have so many iterations because they're trying so many different things. And again, you can just do like absolutely anything with those sequences. So, and they do that. They try
Right.
a lot of different stuff. And I just think it lives outside of the world of reality. And that's kind of, I would love to do more of that.
Yeah, that's so cool.
Yeah.
That'd be fun.
Yeah.
Well, I'm sure you will.
So I'm manifesting that for
I'm
the
sure
next
you
few
will
films.
soon. Yeah. You also worked on a project that you kind of got to do a 2D style job.
Actually, again, it was Trent who came up with the
Right.
concept. Trent and Dan, if I'm correct on that.
Mhm.
And it was a kind of 3D meets 2D project, but also live action. And it was called Once Upon a Studio,
Yep.
and it actually took place in our studio.
Mm-hmm.
So the building with the hat on it is featured, and you actually get to go inside the building that we work in. And I mean, first of all, that in and of itself is like really cool and special,
It
right?
is.
Because it's just like, okay, this is where we work, and this is where the actual magic gets created. And then the concept behind it is all the characters are coming to life. They're jumping off the walls, out of the drawings, out of, anything, any art on the walls. They're like jumping out of it, and they're kind of hanging out at the end of the night after we go home, the artists go home.
Yeah.
And I mean, the concept of that is amazing just to begin with. It's such a cool idea. It's extremely nostalgic. You're getting every character hanging out together, 3D, 2D, all in the same world. I mean, the whole thing was just, I was like in tears, like basically half the time.
Yeah, it's a beautiful film.
It is. It's just amazing. And so for that, we actually had an option in lighting for the first time ever, which is lighting or ink and paint. And usually we don't have an ink and paint department like they used to have back in the day because we don't do 2D art very much anymore.
Mm-hmm.
And so no one really actually gets an opportunity. There's the core artists, the 2D artists that usually get an opportunity to do that. And so for that show, I actually opted to do ink and paint. And it was an extremely amazing experience.
And what was the ink and paint department?
So the ink and paint department, basically what happened is we had the 2D artist drawing all the characters. So any character that they were 2D in their actual film, they were rendered as 2D in this film. Anyone that was 3D was rendered 3D like they normally were. So of course, we have a ton of 2D characters from all the older films that we've had, and they were all actually being hand drawn by 2D artists on a piece of paper, frame by frame.
Yeah.
And then they actually had like a production assistant actually scan them all in so that we could bring them in digitally. And then at that point, yeah, just absolutely amazing. Mm-hmm. Like just that in and of itself is so cool. So at that point, now you have a bunch of drawings, 2D drawings in the computer. You have someone who's like cleaning up all the line work and making sure that it's like a nice crisp line, like the outlines. But then once you also bring it into the 2D software, the 2D software isn't necessarily intelligent enough to understand like the difference of the lines and kind of where the lines end and where it needs to be one color, where it needs to be a different color. So we have a team of ink and paint artists who are actually defining those lines and then also filling in the colors for the characters.
Wow.
Something that was kind of cool about that too was that kind of back in the olden films, actually women were the only ones that ever did ink and paint. I think it kind of said things like they had a lighter touch or lighter hand.
Sure.
And so they would be sitting like, sat, desk by desk, just like painting things over and over again.
Yeah. I heard on Snow White, they actually put blush. They would put their actual blush on Snow White's cheeks to make the blush look real.
Yeah.
But they were amazingly talented painters. That was what they did.
Of course. They were unbelievably talented. They just weren't getting the opportunities that men were back in the day, just to be honest. And that, I mean, I just felt honored, like, to be able to work on a project where I'm actually doing the ink and paint. And really, it was those women who opened up the door for me to be able to actually do my job today and to be able to get the opportunities I'm getting. So,
yeah. Wow.
Yeah, it was, I mean, talk about amazing. I mean, that's Disney history right there. And I was able to actually be, a very small part of it.
Wow.
So yeah, that was a really cool experience. And then, so we had a whole team of us that we actually would go in and color in the lines and make sure that it was like the right color for each character that they actually had back when they were in their movies.
So you were matching exactly the colors of the characters. Yeah.
Yep, totally. One of the cool things that I learned was like the core group, like Mickey's group.
Yeah.
They actually all had black outlines. They were the only ones that had like actual just full black outlines, and then you fill it in with their colors. And then it started to get a little bit more, I guess, mature, whatever you want to say. And they started to actually use different colors for the outlines based on, I don't know. I don't know how they chose the colors, but they chose the colors based on maybe what the inside paint color was.
Mm-hmm.
So of course I had a supervisor that was defining those colors for us, and then we would go in there and like actually paint everything frame by frame.
Wow.
Yeah, and so it was super cool.
Is that for the outline, is it always one color, or was it like, if a character has, trying to think of an example of anybody, my first thought went to like Robin Hood or somebody, like if it's like his shirt, it would be green, and then when it got to his head, does it turn to orange?
It does, yeah.
Right.
That's exactly right. So when you're hitting the collar, you have to like mark off that part and be like, okay, this is the end of the shirt,
right?
This is the neck now, and you have to actually like color it the right color.
Yeah.
And then once you actually define those lines and kind of define the outline, then you can kind of paint bucket, if you will, the
The
inside.
center.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And sometimes once in a while, the drawing, the lines wouldn't meet. They'd come really close, but they wouldn't meet. And so sometimes you also have to like fill in the paint bucket at the bottom or,
Yeah.
paint it. There's a lot of hand painting. And it just was like really cool to be able to be a part of that history
Of Disney
and be able,
history.
yeah, be
Yeah.
able to, I mean, I got to work on some of my favorite characters that inspired me as a kid. I
Yeah.
worked on Cinderella. I
Oh,
actually like
wow.
did actually cry when I got issued that shot. I
Oh
was
my
like,
goodness.
thank you. um,
And side note, your whole wedding was
yeah,
Cinderella
my wedding,
themed,
yeah, it
so
was.
that's kind of beautiful.
Yeah, so
Wow.
it was like a full circle moment for me, and like I'm really thankful to those women who opened up the doors for me, and
Wow.
hopefully I can do that for other women in the future.
That's amazing. What a beautiful love letter to
Oh yeah,
animation in general, animation history, but
100%.
specifically Disney animation.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, it just makes me want to have more 2D animation back in house again. If
I
we
know.
can do that, that'd be so cool.
Yeah, I think the hybrid is
Yeah.
I think that's the way of the future. I think that's
Yep.
why Spider-Verse is so successful, honestly.
Yeah.
That's
2.5D.
2.5,
Yeah.
yeah. Because it's just you're combining all these different skill sets and mediums. It's all the same medium, but it's all different mediums kind of coming together
Yep.
to make animation.
Yeah.
And it's whatever tool makes the look of that specific film.
Yep.
You know?
I agree. And it's fun for us artists to just get to do that, like to be able to sort of change per show if we can, and
Yeah.
just choose what looks good and what works best for that show, for that story. I think that's cool that we can do that. Like we have enough technology now that we can make that work. So
Yeah. I've been working at DreamWorks for a little while, and we've gotten to do a few different styles, which was fun.
Yep.
It's like, okay, cool.
Yeah.
Dogman is very different than
Yep.
Bad Guys or anything else.
Yep.
So
It's a good change of pace.
yeah, it's fun.
Yeah.
That specifically is just such a cool full circle beautiful moment.
Oh,
Very
yeah.
happy for you that you got to do that.
Thanks.
Is there any advice that you have for other women or other artists in general who want to get into the industry?
Really, the advice is just you have to just keep going. Like even when people tell you no, or people, again, we talked a little bit about imposter syndrome.
Yeah.
And you do have to really push through that. There is going to be a ton of rejection. There's a ton of just moments where you just feel not great about what you're doing.
Yeah.
And you really have to make like the conscious decision every day to like just keep going. Like keep one of the things that I guess just kept me going is just the passion for it, and knowing that people around me were really excited about it too. Like we're constantly talking about, like even when we get together, it's hard to not talk about work.
Yes.
Because we just love animation so much, and just the industry and storytelling. So I feel like when you just find those people that you really connect with about storytelling, you stick with them and you're good, and that kind of keeps you going. But yeah, I'm getting a chance right now to actually mentor at Disney Animation, which we talked a lot about the trainee program where we came in.
Yeah.
And now, 7.5 years later, whatever it is, I actually get to be a mentor on the other side of that.
Wow.
And so, yeah, they're doing actually a great job. It's really cool to see how fast people can learn. And it's making me think a lot about what did we learn when we were there? Not only what do I want to add to the program or what do I want to maybe change, but also what did work? Like what was actually working? What did I actually take from those people, and what was like really stuck in my brain and what has stayed with me? And I'm just going to try my best to pass that on to the next group, because that's what someone did for me.
Yeah. Amazing.
Yeah. And it's just, again, like I said before, it's collaboration. And if you feel passionate about what you're doing, it really starts to not feel so stressful. Like you're still going to get stressed, but it starts to feel less stressful because you're in it together.
What would you say you love most about what you get to do?
I think what I love most is, light and color to begin with. I just love light and color. It just really is exciting to me. I think what I love most is just the collaboration between the people. Like I said, like Disney itself they're really collaborative. Every show we're trying really hard to like add something else, do something different, bring something new to the table.
Yeah.
I guess one of the things I haven't talked about is kind of we have our own separate little, let's call them field trips that we do, where we get to kind of step out of the office for just a day and just go be somewhere else together and do things. We have a cool field trip coming up. Field trip seems like a funny word, but we have a field trip coming up where
Team
we're going
building.
we're going, yeah, team building, where we get to go to the LA Zoo. And we specifically all bring our cameras to like take photos. And, you know, the next film we're working on is Zootopia 2. So it's a perfect place to go and just take a bunch of reference shots
Yes.
for animals. And so I'm really looking forward to that. Someone in our department usually sets it up, and we can all just go as a group and we learn cameras. So we step into the layout world a little bit more, and we just try to understand the relationships, and we try to not only take good reference photos that we can use, but also just do something a little bit different than what we would normally do in the computer all day, setting up lights. Like, you want to also observe the light. So, and I kind of bring that into my everyday life as well. Like, you know, we all have our camera phones and we're constantly taking them out and taking photos. But I am also trying to take photos of things that I just observe myself that I think look cool, or also evoke some kind of mood or whatever, or even just a moment in time. Like, you know, if you're walking on the sidewalk and it's spring and, you know, that tree that you love is in bloom and now it's all pink and everything, you know, you want to just grab that moment in time and try to just capture it. And the more and more that I've done that, like, I would say photography is probably what I even did before lighting in the computer, like way back. And so it's really cool to look at something like a shot that I took when I was 20 versus now 15 years later. Like, how would I look at and take that same shot? And it does inform lighting, I would say. So, and I think, again, like, learning that with all my coworkers and going out together and being like, what did you shoot? You know, what did you look at? How did you see something?
Right.
Because we all look at things differently and we all see something differently. And it's really cool to see it through other people's eyes.
Wow.
Yeah. And then, you know, we do bring it into the studio too. Like, a lot of people will do, like, we kind of call it like a shot walkthrough of like, how did you think about lighting your shot? And what was the process? Where'd you start? What color keys did you get, or what were you trying to bring to the table? And how did you think about doing that? And they'll walk through the entire sequence and just think, you know, explain what they did from top to bottom.
And it's cool to think that inspiration is all around you too.
Yes. Yeah, I know 100% it is. And so I really like hearing how somebody else explains their shot or sequence through their own, because I see what it is for what I see, what I'm taking something out of it myself, but I want to see what you thought about it. I want to see what you brought to the table. So yeah, I think that's one of the more valuable things, is just to like collaborate with each other. And we do share a lot. That's something I noticed about the studio right away. Other studios didn't really do that. We're not spending time showing off our shots to each other. But I remember on Ralph Breaks the Internet, one of my first supervisors told us about like the Tangled sequence where she's singing When Will My Life Begin? And the light is pouring in. She has like a triangle window, and the light's pouring in, but the day is going on, because she's talking about doing her entire day from top to bottom. At 7 a.m. I'm painting the ceiling, then I'm doing this, that. And she's at home all day. The lighting was getting, basically they made it so that the lighting was getting more and more contained as the sequence was going on. So, you know, the entire room is lit up and everything's bright and there's so much hope. And then as time goes on, that triangle kind of comes in on her. And at the end, she's like really in this, like, like physically you're seeing the light being very enclosed in, and she's standing inside like that triangle. I would have never noticed that, you know, myself, but someone walked through their entire sequence and like explained it to me. And I thought that was really cool. And so I was trying to put it into Ralph Breaks the Internet as much as I could.
Wow.
And the sense of that, those two characters, when they were, of Ralph and Vanellope, when they were together, the idea behind the concept of those two characters was that Ralph was really overshadowing Vanellope. She was really just like not finding her way, because he was keeping her like behind. He was saying like, stay with me, literally in his shadow. And so anytime I could like light up Ralph and then make her quite literally in his shadow, I would do that. And it was just, you know, maybe I wouldn't have thought of that had my supervisor not encouraged me to like think that way.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, I think it's just collaborating with people that are willing to consistently come to you and show you things and work with you and actually give you ideas.
Right.
And a lot of the times I do just get to the end of a shot and I'm like, I need like fresh eyes or somebody to look at this. And you can turn to somebody else and go, please, like, look at this and tell me what you see, or, you know, give me some ideas if you have any. And it happens a lot, like on every show, that happens a lot.
Wow.
So yeah, I think I think just working with the people are so creative and so talented. It's kind of like mind blowing. Yeah.
It really
Still.
is.
Yeah.
And it's amazing that it's the people around you that continue to inspire you and re-inspire the art and
Yep.
re-inspire the filmmaking. And then those movies go out just like Force Awakens kind of did with you,
Exactly. Yeah.
re-inspire those people to now do their thing and on and on and on.
Yep.
And that's kind of the beautiful part about filmmaking.
Yeah. That's the cycle. And I mean, I hope to just be able to keep giving that back to the next group of artists that's going to come in, because I'm sure they'll do great things with it too. So yeah, it's pretty cool. It's pretty cool what we do, I think.
It's very cool.
Yeah.
It's super cool. Well, thank you so much for taking the time to share your experiences and your thoughts on lighting and animation and everything. And it's been really awesome and really inspirational. And I think I hope that people will get a lot out of this. I think they will. And thank you.
Yeah, thank you for having me. I think this is super cool. I love the idea of this podcast, and I'm really excited to watch more of the episodes myself and just learn more myself. And
Yeah.
even my own friends, I'm learning more about them just from watching this. So yeah, thank you for doing this, and thank you for having me. It's really
Sure
fun.
thing. Well, thank you so much for doing this. And thank you guys so much for watching this episode of Nick's Friends in Film or listening to it. And please like, comment, and subscribe below. And please join us here next week for our next friend. Thanks so much. Bye.